Hi, Lee Thurburn here, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Live Stream Lee, where we meet every day, Monday through Friday at 3 o'clock, and we talk about business. And we talk about specifically how to grow your business faster so that you have more money, so that you have more time, and that you have something more valuable at the end of whenever the end comes and you decide you want to sell or retire or what have you. So our goal here is to help you do that. Now I'm noticing a little message that tells me I'm having a problem with connecting to LinkedIn. I'm going to click the go live button. Okay, it says I'm live. Good. Now, welcome. If you just now connected on LinkedIn, I had a little technical issue, but StreamYard seems to be pretty doggone responsive about fixing these issues. In the last 3 weeks, I've had either 2 or 3 occasions where when I started the live stream, somehow LinkedIn didn't pick up. Well, at the end of the streaming session, StreamYard, which is the studio tool that I use, actually has a question that, how'd things go, good or bad? And if it's bad, they ask you why. They check in with you within about an hour to find out what happened. They actually send you an email. Don't you love good customer service? Companies that actually care. When you fill in a report that says something didn't go right, they actually get right back to you. Isn't that awesome? Well, StreamYard, I'm real pleased with the live streaming technology that they have. So today we're going to continue our conversation about building a business plan. And before I jump into that, I want to show off my new, let's see here, right here, my new branded swag logo. There's a guy that I have known for quite a few years. His name is Bob Hurt. And Bob has a company called Impressions Unlimited. Now you can find out more about Bob by going to livestreamlee.com and clicking on the Bob Hurt link that you'll find on the right-hand side. Bob has the best prices and the greatest quality and incredible customer service. He is so interested in making sure that, your client, his client, me, was happy. He really jumped through hoops. If you're looking for some professional swag to promote your business, get in touch with Bob. He's a great guy and he'll take great care of you. And he's got the best prices anywhere that I've come across. Bob Hurt, good guy. Okay, now before we actually jump in and get started, again, about livestreamlee.com, please go there and join our community. It's free, and when you're in the community, you get access to a lot of great stuff. For example, we're now talking about business plans. We're soon going to be talking about cash flow projections. I'm going to provide you with examples of business plans and a powerful cash flow projection spreadsheet tool that we're going to go over here in the next couple of days that you can use to predict the future, use to predict your cash flow. It's an incredible tool. But that's free for you if you're a member of livestreamlee.com's community. And in addition, you get a software package called Apricot Rocket, which I've developed, which is powerful to help you grow your business. And in addition, we're going to try to help send you customers. If you'll tell us about your business when you create your account, tell us about the services that you offer, we'll try to connect you up to people that are looking for those kinds of services. But we can't do any of that if you don't go to livestreamlee.com and join the community. So please do that. Okay, we talked about starting a business. Well, as you go through the various steps, creating a business plan is an important step. Why do you create a business plan? This is like super quick review of yesterday's episode, because you're twice as likely to be successful. And in other words, you cut your failure possibility in half, and you're about 50% more likely to get either bank loans or investor financing. If you don't have a business plan, you can pretty much close the door on that stuff. So what are the major sections of a business plan? Here you go. Cover page, executive summary, a company section. You're going to have a strategy section, marketing, where you're going to talk about your marketing. You're going to talk about implementation. You're going to have your projections, and then you're going to talk about financing. Now, we talked about all of this stuff in a to a certain level of detail yesterday. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go a little deeper into some of the sections. Specifically, we're going to talk about in the company section, you have vision and mission statements, and you have a number of other things, competitor analysis. I want to go into more detail on the vision and mission statement, and also a little bit into more detail on the competitor analysis. So specifically, let's jump into the mission and vision statement. So why is a vision statement, why is a mission statement important? Well, if all you're ever going to do is have a sole proprietorship with a half dozen or a dozen employees, it probably isn't, quite honestly. But if you're going to grow your business to any degree beyond just being a little tiny business, two men in a truck, Chuck in a truck, if you're going to grow your business to where you have a significant asset, you need a vision and mission statement because it helps people know what it is you're all about. It helps most importantly, it helps your employees know where you're headed. I remember as we grew FlashNet, which at one point had about 400 employees, and I was the founder and chairman and CEO. And naturally, when it first started out, and Scott, my partner, and I, we had one employee, it wasn't real hard for us to communicate and get that person to know what was important. We were all scrambling, doing whatever was needed to be able to grow the business. But as it grew over time, and we grew to the point where we had 400 employees, the business changed. I remember after about a year, I came into the office one day and Scott said he introduced me to our HR director. And afterwards I said, Scott, I didn't even know we had an HR director. And he said, yeah, we hired her about a week ago. I was blown away that we had reached the point with 100 employees where we needed to have somebody specifically for HR. Well, as the company grew and it became more and more complicated, my job as chairman and CEO actually shifted to where I spent about 50% of my time in meetings. And the whole purpose of the meetings was to share vision and mission with the different echelons of staff. Running a big business is a lot like running a dog sled. People need to know what direction you want to go. If you have a dog sled and every dog is on its own leash, and that's like a 15 or 20 foot long line, those dogs are going to be going all different directions. You've got to have a lead line, and then each dog is pulling on the lead line, and they're all going after and following the lead dog. Well, your job when you're running a big company is to be the lead dog, and you want everybody pulling in the direction that you want them to go. And that's what the purpose of a vision and mission statement is. You have to have people that understand why the company is doing what it's doing, so that as you delegate the responsibility for making decisions to lower and lower levels of management, as people become empowered to help make decisions, because you can't make them all. You need them to make decisions from an understanding, a perspective of understanding what it is that's the overarching goal of the company. So you have to have a vision and mission statement that helps people know what the purpose of the company is. Why are we doing what we're doing? What business are we actually in? And what are the values and the principles and the beliefs that underlie the reason that we're in business? That way they can make informed and correct decisions to help you accomplish the overarching goals and objectives that the company has. So those are the kinds of things that you talk about, and you want to have clarity. It needs to be a powerful and yet simple vision and mission statement. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is what's called, now this is in the strategy section. We've already talked in detail about doing SWOT analysis, doing 5 forces analysis, and doing a value chain analysis. I'm not going to go into great detail right now. We'll actually have another episode specifically for the Pastel analysis. But the Pastel analysis is very simply a powerful way of looking at, here we go, the environment that you're in. It's kind of an environmental analysis. The Pastel stands for political, economic, sociocultural, technological, environmental, and legal. So each one of these environments is different. The political environment, here in the United States, we just went through our every 4 years our crazy season, and we voted for a president. And regardless of whether or not you like the way the outcome came, you'll have a chance to go through the craziness again, starting in about 2 more years, and then in 2 years beyond that, we'll do the same thing. So my point is that politically things change. Companies come in and out of favor, industries come in and out of favor, all kinds of things come in and out of favor. The degree to which your company is impacted by changes in politics or the political environment needs to be something that you talk about and analyze. So you want to do a political analysis. From an economic perspective, generally speaking, the economies are either going up or going down in terms of the vibrancy and the expansion rate. Either you have a slow expansion or maybe even a contraction, or you have a rapid expansion. You have inflationary times and deflationary times. There's all kinds of things, periods of high interest rates and low interest rates, changing values of currency exchange. All these things impact your business and maybe potentially your business. Then you have social, cultural changes. These are personal preferences that to some degree are driven by just a general consensus in society as to what's right and what's wrong. There's plenty of it going on. You can identify it for yourself, but lots of different changes in what people think is appropriate. And so you need to think about what the people think about, because your messaging and your product design and your product, every aspect of how you go to market is impacted by the cultural and social environment that we exist within. Then there's technology. Technology makes change, has an impact on how you do business and how you interact with your customers and how your supply chain works. All of these things, technology needs to be considered. Then there's the environmental concerns, everything from sustainability to carbon footprint. What's the impact your company has? And to some degree, that's also part of the social cultural. What aspect of the environment is environmental impact that your company has or might have is currently in favor or out of favor, being focused on or not being focused on by the social cultural environment in which we live. And then, of course, legal. We live in a litigious society here in the United States, and there is constantly changing laws. So not only do you have the legal regulatory structure of the environment and the industry that you have to be aware of and concerned about, but you also have the threat of lawsuits and the propensity for and the probability of a lawsuit occurring within your particular industry. Some industries are way more prone to lawsuits than others, and so you need to think about all of these things. That's the Pastel analysis. So after you look at the Pastel analysis, you also want to consider your strategy. You want to do a strategy. Basically there are 3 main strategies. And so let me pull up the slide for this. And here it is. Here's the strategy analysis. There are only 3 major types of strategies, or 3 primary types of strategies that you can select from: low-cost leadership, differentiation, or focus. Now, I've got a simple example of this that you can look at, and that's in the grocery industry. Aldi, Tom Thumb, and Walmart would all, to some degree, represent the low-cost leadership point. Now, Walmart and Aldi would probably be more low-cost than Tom Thumb, but I used to live at the corner of Preston and Forest, where you had a Tom Thumb, a Whole Foods, and a natural foods store on each corner. I kind of already talked about this in another episode, but you could choose to be the low-cost leader, kind of like an Aldi or a Tom Thumb or a Walmart. Each one of those is a slightly different blend of how they approach low-cost leadership. Or you could be highly differentiated. Whole Foods and Trader Joe's represent groceries that are highly differentiated. They each take a slightly different tact on how they implement a differentiation strategy, but they're both both of them rely upon a differentiation strategy. And then you have a highly focused strategy, which Natural Foods represents. Natural Foods, about 50% of their shelf space is devoted to supplements as opposed to foods. So their focus is really on the market that's grocery shopping, but has a high level of awareness and concern and demand for supplements as part of their diet. And so Natural Foods represents the most niche focused within the group. So what is the strategy you're going to choose and why? And then when you think about that, how are you going to implement this vis-a-vis your competitors? Now, I don't have a specific slide for competitor analysis, but when you do a competitor analysis, which actually comes back under the marketing section. No, actually comes under the strategy section. Actually, you could fit it under either one of them. But when you do a competitor analysis, you're going to look at a number of things. You want to identify competitors that are direct competitors. There's really essentially three types of competitors: direct, significant, and indirect. Direct competitors are people that's after exactly the same customer at the same price point, offering the same or similar products to what you do or services to what you do. Significant competitors are competitors that have a lot of crossover into your market space, but they're not direct competitors. And indirect competitors are people that cover your space, but they're really significantly off focus. In the food service industry, you could look at it this way. If you sell hamburgers through a drive-through window, you're in the fast food hamburger business. That means you're competing directly with In-N-Out Burger and McDonald's and all of that sort. Now, a direct competitor for you would be McDonald's and In-N-Out Burger and Burger King and Wendy's and so on. Those are all direct competitors because they're selling burgers, fast food, through drive-in windows as well as through walk-up stores. But you're also in the fast food industry, and so you're competing with Taco Bell and all the pizza joints and taco joints and chicken joints that sell fast food and also sell it through drive-through. So those would be your significant competitors. And then your indirect competitors would be fine dining restaurants like Italian or French food or any kind of restaurant where you primarily go in and have a sit-down dining experience as opposed to a drive-through or a fast service. Now, there's a lot of different gradations in the restaurant industry, but hopefully that gives you a quick understanding of what the difference between direct, significant, and indirect are. You want to do an analysis of your top 5 competitors. How do each of them differentiate themselves in the market? How are they vulnerable? How are you going to differentiate yourself in the market? And how are you going to build a competitive advantage? What's going to be the unique selling proposition that you're going to talk about as you talk to your audience about your competitors? These are the things that you want to discuss in the competitor analysis section. Okay, so let's see here. I also want to talk about pricing. So let's talk about our pricing strategy. When you talk about a pricing strategy, you want to basically realize that one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they get into business is they don't price correctly. Many, in fact, I'd say the majority of small businesses make a fundamental mistake in their pricing strategy, and they price too low. Pricing sends a message to the market. Think about this. Now, I don't drink wine, but occasionally, especially at Christmas time, I'll go to Christmas parties, and it's nice to take a bottle of wine. Since I don't drink wine, I don't really know what good wine is. I don't know how to choose a good wine. And that's okay. What I do is I stand there at the wine counter and I look at the shelves. Let's say I'm looking for a Merlot. Well, typically the more expensive ones are kind of at the top where you can easily pick them. So I look a little bit farther down, and typically on the left-hand side are the cheap wines, and on the right-hand side are the most expensive. So I kind of look low to middle, low level, middle of the rack, and I find a wine. Now, I don't want a $5 or $7 bottle of wine because I'm afraid they won't be any good. And I don't want a $40 or $50 bottle of wine because I'm probably spending too much money. So I look for something in the $15 or $20 range, because to me, that gives me an indication that it's probably a decent wine and I'm not overspending. Now, obviously, if I really wanted to make an impression with somebody, I'd probably spend a lot on a bottle of wine and hope that it's good and hope that people would appreciate what I did. But the reality is, most of the time, price sends a message. Price can tell people that your product isn't high quality, or it can tell your people that your product is premium quality. So it's important for you to be careful and aware of the signals that pricing sends. And that's a good little analogy about that. But more importantly, when you're doing your pricing, you want to realize that people are looking for value. And value is a highly subjective thing. Now, if you look at a Rolex watch versus a knockoff of a Rolex watch, you can say, well, they both tell time, and that's true. They both do tell time. But people don't buy a Rolex watch because they need to know what time it is. People buy a Rolex watch because they want you to know they can afford a Rolex watch. So the purpose, the value that people put into something isn't a function directly of the material cost or the workmanship that goes into it, though those things do make a difference. For example, a Timex doesn't have any valuable materials. It's stainless steel and maybe even battery operated. A Rolex is going to have gold and platinum and silver and diamonds, and it's going to be a finely machined, intricate piece of work that if you took it all apart, the materials would have significant intrinsic value. But a Timex, that's not the case. Well, the significant intrinsic value of the Rolex isn't the value. It's a part of the value. The value is the fact that it's a Rolex. They're exclusive, they're expensive, they're finely crafted, and they represent success. So what does your product represent? Does your product pricing represent success? Does your product pricing convey the message that you have a high quality product? Your value proposition is how you talk about your product, and you need to talk about it in terms of the benefit your customer gets. So here what I'm talking about when we're talking about your pricing strategy is you have to think about all of these different elements, and you need to weave them into a story that your investor looking at your business plan will understand about how you're positioning your product in the market relative to the pricing conversation. Okay, now, one of the other sections of the business plan is the financing and funding section. And this is typically where you put your risks, where you list all of your risks in detail. Now, there's a little bit of a difference between a business plan and a private placement memorandum. What we're actually talking about now is the realm of a private placement memorandum. A business plan is primarily designed for the owner, founder, entrepreneur of the business to be able to make sure that they've thought through everything. But there's a version of the business plan that is used not only for that, but to talk to investors and ask investors to put money into the business. And that version of the business plan will always have a risk section, because when you're asking people to invest in your business, or when you're asking lenders to lend you money, they're going to want to know that you've thought about the risks associated with a business, and that you have a reasonable, logical, and importantly, a powerful argument for why you're going to be able to overcome or mitigate those risks. And that's where the risk section comes in. Now, the risk section for every business will have different things. But what I've done here is I've put down sort of the headings for the different risk sections that are most commonly associated with most businesses. And so You're going to want to talk about, if you have an early stage business, the fact that it's an early stage business, that it's not yet proven. There's lots of unknowns about your ability to generate demand in the market and to serve and satisfy that demand in an effective and efficient way. You're going to want to talk about how the price that you've set for the stock that you're selling is relatively arbitrary because you don't have a lot of financial data and experience to set a normal net present value cash flow discounted cash flow type of valuation metric onto the stock. You usually don't have an audit, so that's a risk that nobody has independently verified the accuracy of your information. In most cases, there's no independent board because most startup businesses don't yet have an official professional independent board. There will typically not be an aftermarket for the stock. If you're selling stock, the people that buy your stock are stuck with it. They're not going to be able to sell it. You typically will open the offering for a relatively long time frame so that you can have plenty of time to get the money that you're looking to get. You'll often discuss the proceeds, but legitimately the use of proceeds that you determine and present in your private placement or your business plan will often be very general, because as you start to execute the business, things will come up and you'll want to have the flexibility to be able to shift and move monies around. You want to talk about the limited transferability of the stock. The fact is, you may very well even limit the transferability of the stock. That's a conversation for a different point in time. But generally speaking, most startup businesses don't have a whole lot of transferability, and you may restrict that. You may have the inability to be able to go back and get additional capital. Small businesses that don't grow quickly and show that they're successful, if they need additional capital, will often have trouble getting additional capital. Some additional risks. You may very well be dependent on key suppliers for your business. And if they cut you off, or if you have an issue, or if they go out of business, it may impact your business. You may have unproven new technologies, and you may not yet be able to prove that those technologies are going to be sufficient for the scale that you need to go to as your business grows. There may be new competitors coming into the business that are better funded, or have newer technologies, or have a lower cost structure than you. These things can all be extremely difficult for you to respond to. The existing competitors in the business, how are they going to respond? Their response might be much more aggressive than you anticipate. There might be regulatory changes or challenges that occur. You need to talk about those. What does the regulatory environment look like? There might be limited management resources. Most small startup businesses have a lot of limited management resources. Your management team isn't large because it's a small business and you don't have a lot of funding. There might be a concentration of management authority because of stock ownership in a small or limited number of people, and that might also be an issue. And there could be no minimum capital. So if an investor gave you $10,000 or $50,000 and you didn't get the rest of the money you're after, and you have the right to take that money and go ahead and get started, that's a risk. And then finally, you need to think about the risks that are associated with a lack of sufficient insurance, the liability that exists within your industry that you might be subjected to, and then the threat of litigation, either litigation caused by competitors or caused by customers. You can get litigated against for literally no good reason. So in your risk section, you want to talk about all of these things. And believe me, it is in your best interest to be incredibly detailed in your discussion and disclosure of the risks. Professional investors that are thinking about giving money or lending you money, investing in your business or lending you money, they already know these risks. They're not going to be scared away by the risks that you disclose. Only the unprofessional, unsophisticated investors will be scared away by the risk section. You're going to be able to justify to the professional investors, and they're going to get more comfortable with your business by virtue of the fact that you disclosed these risks. They're going to appreciate the fact you thought about it. Now, as you grow your business, you're going to eventually reach the point where you're thinking about, how am I going to sell the business? I want to introduce you to Bob Hampton. Bob Hampton is a financial planner for businesses. He literally helps you right from the start plan your exit. And while your exit may not yet be clear to you, there are things that you can put into place early on that'll give you more options when you get to the point that you want to exit. It is a good idea for you to reach out to Bob Hampton and get to know him. Go to livestreamly.com, click on the Bob Hampton button, and learn more about Bob. Reach out to Bob and have a conversation with him. Those conversations are free, and I have a pretty good idea that he'll be able to give you some good things to think about that'll put you in a better position when that day comes for you to exit the business. Thank you for attending and tuning in to livestreamly.com. And please go to livestreamly.com and join our community. Thank you for watching this broadcast.